Lee Finnegan had always prided herself on her ability to control situations, to use her medical expertise to heal and save lives. But in this moment, as she stood in the sterile confines of her office, she couldn't deny the sick feeling gnawing at her conscience. What she was about to do was a betrayal, an action that would haunt her forever, but she justified it. She had no choice. Bill Spencer, the man who had pulled her into his web of power and manipulation, had made it clear that Luna was a three-tone that needed to be eliminated. It was a decision that would ripple through all their lives, leaving destruction in its wake. Bill Spencer had always been a man driven by ambition, by his need to control everything around him. Spencer Publications, the empire he had built, was his pride, and he would stop at nothing to protect it, even if it meant resorting to drastic measures. Luna, carrying a child that could potentially be a rival heir to his empire, had become an obstacle in his mind. To him, she represented a future he couldn't afford to let exist. He couldn't allow her to bring a child into the world who might one day threaten his son Liam's position as the heir to Spencer Publications. Luna's pregnancy, in Bill's eyes, was the ultimate challenge to his legacy. He needed to act and quickly. The alliance between Lee and Bill was not born out of shared moral values or even mutual respect. It was born out of necessity. Lee, a brilliant doctor with a long history of making difficult decisions, saw this as her only chance to maintain her standing and her position. Bill had promised her power and protection in exchange for her help. What she didn't know was just how far Bill was willing to go to get what he wanted. Lee's role in this gruesome plan was crucial. She had access to the medical supplies and knowledge that Bill needed. It was through her connections that the private clinic, where the operation would take place, was arranged. It was also Lee who would have to ensure that Luna didn't resist, that Luna didn't have the ability to fight back against what was about to happen. And so, Lee concocted a plan. She would slip a powerful sedative into Luna's food, rendering her unconscious and unaware of what was happening. Once Luna was out of the way, Bill would handle the rest. The night of the plan arrived. Lee had prepared the drugged food with precision, ensuring that Luna would fall into a deep sleep without suspicion. She invited Luna to dinner under the pretense of a casual evening, but the tension was palpable. Luna, still unaware of the danger surrounding her, ate the food that Lee had carefully prepared, unaware of the poison hidden within. It wasn't long before Luna's vision blurred, her body grew heavy, and the room around her spun. Lee watched as Luna's eyelids fluttered and finally closed, slipping into an unconscious state. The sense of power that Lee felt was brief and fleeting, replaced by a deep sense of unease. Bill, ever the master manipulator, was ready. As soon as Luna was unconscious, he had the private clinic set up and waiting. He had already made arrangements with the clinic staff, ensuring that the procedure would go smoothly and that the results would be altered. This was not just any ordinary operation. It was a carefully orchestrated cover-up designed to erase the pregnancy and any potential heir Luna carried. Bill's control over the situation was absolute, as always. The clinic, a small but high-end facility, was discreet and hidden from public view, just the kind of place where no one would question anything that happened. Luna was carefully transported to the clinic, her limp body handled with clinical precision. As she was prepared for the procedure, Bill stood by, overseeing everything. He watched with cold, calculating eyes as the staff went through the motions. The fear in Luna's body was irrelevant to him. She was just another obstacle to be removed. The operation, which should have been a routine medical procedure, was twisted into something else entirely. Bill's influence ensured that the results were altered, and Luna's child was removed without any chance of survival. In the eyes of the clinic, the pregnancy had never existed, and no one would ever know the truth. The procedure was a success in Bill's eyes. He had gotten what he wanted. Luna would wake up none the wiser, believing she had lost the child naturally, her hopes and dreams dashed without any warning. Bill, feeling a twisted sense of triumph, left the clinic as soon as the procedure was complete. He was confident that this would secure his legacy and that the threat Luna posed to Spencer Publications was finally gone. When Luna eventually woke, the disorientation she felt was overwhelming. Her head ached and her body felt foreign to her. She tried to sit up, but a wave of nausea washed over her. It took her a few moments to realize she was in an unfamiliar place, the sterile environment of a medical clinic surrounding her. Panic set in as the events of the evening began to come back to her. She remembered dinner. She remembered feeling strange, then nothing. What had happened? As Luna tried to piece together the events, a nurse entered the room. The nurse informed her that the procedure had been successful and that Luna's pregnancy had ended. Luna was told that there had been complications, nothing too alarming, but that her body had simply rejected the pregnancy. The explanation seemed cold and clinical, and Luna's heart sank as the truth began to dawn on her. Her child was gone. But that wasn't the most devastating part. It was the feeling of betrayal that tore at her. She had been manipulated, drugged, and trapped in a world she no longer recognized. Luna's mind raced. She tried to stand to leave, but her body was too weak. She was lost, disoriented, and confused. The more she thought about what had happened, the more the realization settled in this was no accident. Bill had orchestrated it all. He had removed her child, and he had used Lee, someone Luna once trusted, to make it happen. The betrayal cut deep, but it also ignited something within Luna. The feeling of helplessness and grief turned to a burning desire for revenge. She would make Bill pay for what he had done. She would make them both pay. As she recovered, Luna began to plan. She knew she couldn't just confront Bill directly. She needed a strategy. She needed leverage. She needed to make him feel the pain she felt, the same emptiness that now consumed her. Luna spent days, then weeks, quietly gathering information. She reached out to those who might help her, those who had seen the dark side of Bill's business dealings, those who could be used to bring him down. She was careful, calculating every move. The woman who had once been vulnerable, manipulated by the power of the Spencer family, was now a force to be reckoned with. Lee, however, wasn't completely out of the picture. Despite the guilt that had consumed her, she was still bound to Bill by the promises he had made. She watched, terrified, as Luna began to move closer to her goal. Lee had become more than just an accomplice. She was a part of the web that Luna was now trying to unravel. The truth about her involvement would eventually come out, and when it did, the consequences would be dire. Lee had crossed a line, one that she couldn't erase, and now she had to live with the fear of Luna's revenge hanging over her head. But Luna's plan was moving forward, and as the days passed, she grew more determined. The power she had once feared now seemed like the only tool that could free her. She was no longer the broken woman who had been silenced. She was the one in control now, and Bill Spencer was about to learn the true meaning of consequences. Luna's quest for revenge was just beginning. She would stop at nothing to make Bill and Lee feel the weight of their betrayal. The Spencer legacy would crumble, and Luna would be the one to tear it down, piece by piece. The quiet fury inside her would soon explode, and nothing and no one would stand in her way. Luna's determination to take down Bill Spencer grew stronger with every passing day. The pain of losing her child was still raw, a constant reminder of the betrayal she had endured at the hands of the man who once promised her protection. The sting of Bill's cold manipulation was ever present, and she knew that the only way to regain control of her life and her future was to make him feel the same agony he had inflicted on her. She wasn't just going to expose him for his wrongdoing, she was going to make him suffer in ways he could never have imagined. Bill had turned her life into a nightmare, and it was time for him to pay for it. Luna's mind was sharp, focused on the goal ahead. She spent countless hours researching Bill's past, his business dealings, his darkest secrets. She knew that to bring him down, she had to make it personal. She would take the very things that mattered to him, his family, his empire, and his reputation, and tear them apart one by one. And she would do it with precision, using the tools she had at her disposal. The first step in Luna's plan was to expose Bill's illegal activities. She had long suspected that Bill's empire was built on a foundation of shady business dealings, but now she had proof. She began reaching out to the people who knew the most about his crooked schemes, quietly gathering evidence. Luna's contacts in the business world, those who had been burned by Bill's ruthless tactics, were more than willing to provide the information she needed. The documents she collected told a story of corruption, manipulation, and greed. Bill's empire was a house of cards, ready to fall. But Luna knew she couldn't just drop the bombshell of Bill's criminal activities and expect him to go down quietly. He had the resources, the power, and the connections to cover up his tracks. She needed a way to make the truth undeniable, to ensure that Bill couldn't spin the narrative in his favor. That's where Lee came into play. Though Lee had betrayed her, Luna knew that the woman was still a valuable asset. Lee had been the one to carry out the procedure that had ended Luna's pregnancy, and she had been complicit in the deception. But Lee also knew secrets about Bill that no one else did. Luna had to use that to her advantage. Luna carefully reached out to Lee, knowing that the doctor's guilt was eating away at her. Lee was tormented by what she had done, and Luna knew that would be her leverage. If Luna could make Lee feel the weight of her betrayal, if she could make Lee understand that she, too, had been a pawn in Bill's game, she might be able to convince her to help expose him. But Luna wasn't going to approach Lee with kindness. She knew that Lee had to feel the fear and pressure of what was coming. Only then would she be ready to crack. The meeting between the two women was tense. Lee, who had been avoiding Luna since the procedure, couldn't look her in the eye. The guilt was written all over her face. Luna, however, was calm, collected, and calculating. She didn't speak to Lee with anger or accusation. Instead, she presented her with a choice: help her take down Bill, or become a part of his downfall. Luna made it clear that there was no escape from the truth. If Lee didn't cooperate, her role in the conspiracy would be exposed, and she would lose everything she had worked for: her career, her reputation, and her freedom. Lee, shaking with fear and regret, agreed to help Luna. She didn't have much of a choice, but she wasn't going to make it easy for Luna. Lee wanted something in return. She wanted protection. She wanted to make sure that she wouldn't be prosecuted for her role in the scheme. And she wanted to ensure that her involvement in the criminal activities of Spencer Publications wouldn't be used against her. Luna agreed, knowing that she had no other option. They had a mutual understanding. Lee would help expose Bill's secrets, but she would remain free of the consequences. Together, they dug deeper into the evidence. Lee provided Luna with access to the private medical records that Bill had tried to bury, including the documents that proved the procedure had been a calculated, intentional act to destroy Luna's pregnancy. Luna also uncovered more damning information about Bill's manipulations in his business dealings, and how his empire had been built on the backs of those he had crushed. The walls were closing in on Bill, and Luna could feel the weight of her plan coming together. But as the pressure mounted, so did Bill's paranoia. He wasn't stupid. He knew that Luna had been more than just a victim. He had seen her resilience and her determination, and he feared that she was plotting something. Bill began to take more drastic measures to protect himself. He had private investigators tailing Luna, watching her every move, hoping to uncover any weakness he could exploit. But Luna was always one step ahead. She knew that she couldn't trust anyone, and she couldn't afford to make mistakes. As Luna and Lee prepared to leak the evidence they had gathered, the tension between them continued to grow. Lee was nervous. Her life was on the line, and she wasn't sure how far Luna would go to ensure her safety. But Luna was resolute. She wasn't going to stop until Bill paid for what he had done, not just to her, but to everyone he had ever manipulated and destroyed. The two women began to plant the evidence in key place documents that would find their way into the hands of the media, screenshots that would expose Bill's fraudulent dealings, and files that would implicate him in illegal activities. Bill's carefully constructed empire was about to come crashing down. However, as Luna prepared to make her final move, she received a shocking piece of information. Bill, in a desperate bid to hold onto power, had been making backroom deals to secure his future. He had started manipulating his family, using Liam and Katie to shore up his position, and had even begun planning a smear campaign to discredit Luna. He wasn't going down without a fight. Bill's desperation made him even more dangerous. The moment of truth arrived when Luna made the decision to go public with the evidence. She called a press conference, one that would change everything. But Bill, ever the strategist, was ready for her. The Spencer family was divided, but Bill wasn't going down without a fight. He had prepared for this moment, and when Luna stepped onto the stage to reveal the truth, Bill's lawyers swooped in with a counterattack. The battle for the Spencer legacy had officially begun. Luna stood before the world, ready to expose Bill for all his crimes. The evidence was damning. The secrets were out. But Bill had the power and influence to fight back. His legal team worked quickly to discredit Luna's evidence, questioning her motives and painting her as a woman scorned, desperate for revenge. The media, always hungry for drama, was torn. Some supported Luna, seeing her as a victim who had finally found the courage to speak out, while others sided with Bill, believing that Luna's actions were just another chapter in the Spencer family's ongoing power struggle. Luna knew that the fight was far from over. She had exposed the truth, but now she had to make sure Bill was held accountable. With Lee's help, she began to piece together the final part of her plan, a way to bring Bill to his knees, not just in the public eye, but in the courtroom. She wasn't going to stop until she had exacted her revenge, and nothing would stand in her way. As the battle raged on, Luna realized that she wasn't just fighting for justice. She was fighting for her own soul. Bill had taken everything from her child, her peace of mind, her future. But now she had the chance to take it all back. And she would do whatever it took to make sure Bill Spencer knew exactly what it felt like to lose everything. The storm was coming, and neither Bill nor Luna was ready for the devastating aftermath.